I mean, obviously, the sanctions impact Russia, but they also impact everybody who deals with Russia. I mean, people engage in trade because it's mutually beneficial. So countries that decide to trade with Russia, either they buy from Russia, they sell to Russia, they're doing it because there's an advantage. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So everybody is being hurt by the sanctions, not just Russia. But clearly, there's more pain for Russia than collectively for the rest of the world. How they're working, will they backfire? I don't know. I mean, I'm not, a geopolitical guy. I mean, I'm not a general or a military strategist as far as that's concerned. But I know if I were Putin, certainly to me, and, I'm not defending Putin or think he's a good guy or anything. But to me, what our response, even though we're not firing missiles, right? To me, it's like an act of war. It's economic war. We're trying to inflict harm on Russia. We're coordinating our efforts. So, I mean, that would be the same thing if we said, okay, we're going to drop bombs on you. No, we're doing these sanctions, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it would be better to actually, have a real war and get it over with, rather than doing this if it ultimately is going to lead to war. I don't know, but you back somebody into a corner. Obviously, maybe this guy is not that very stable, but this, unless this is all part of his plan, unless he just assumed this was going to happen, and he's like, okay, it's no big deal. He's got an agenda that he thinks is going to, there's going to be some kind of compromise with the Ukraine. I mean, I think the main thing is he doesn't want the Ukraine to be in NATO. And I think, he wants some of the territory, Crimea, he wants to have that, and some of these other separate independent territories that are aligned more with Russia, or he thinks they are. He wants to annex them or make them part of Russia and not part of the Ukraine. I don't know, what his ultimate ambition is, but I have been critical on my podcast of our role in even having NATO, because I've been a big critic of NATO for years, decades. I mean, ever since the Soviet Union fell apart and the Warsaw Pact nations no longer existed, NATO had outlived its purpose. I mean, even if you argue that we never needed NATO to begin with, if you want to accept the fact that we needed it during the Cold War, we needed a way to counteract the expansion of the Warsaw Pact nations, and so we had the NATO alliance. Well, once your enemy is gone, well, can't you just claim victory and just go home? Right? But, the problem is you have this huge bureaucracy that's in place, and everybody loves being a part of NATO. They're all making a lot of money. They have all kinds of power. And so NATO didn't go away. It got bigger. And now, like all the countries that were part of the Warsaw Pact, slowly but surely, they're all joining NATO. And obviously, that's not something that was sitting well with Putin. To me, if we just would have got rid of NATO a long time ago, we wouldn't be in this situation today, and we would have saved a lot of money, because I don't know that NATO is something that we need. I know that the United States, a lot of countries probably feel they get a good deal out of NATO because, we protect a lot of different countries, but we can't afford to protect other countries. We can't even afford to protect ourselves. We're having to borrow all this money to finance this military empire. So I would just assume have us spend a lot less borrowed money on a bloated military that we don't need. We shouldn't be weaponizing it. I mean, if we really want to preserve the dollar status, we should resist any temptation to weaponize it, because we should let people know, hey, if you trust the dollar, we're not going to pull that rug out from under you, even if you're our adversary. But the minute you say, look, we're going to use this against you as like a weapon of war, because we don't want to engage in a hot war, because we don't want to put, soldiers on the ground that might get killed, because that's, apart from the loss of life, that's not good for our politics to see Americans coming home in body bags. So we want a war where nobody dies. So our weapon is going to be the US dollar. Well, if you know that the dollar is going to be a weapon, why do you want to put yourself in a position where that weapon can be used against you? So the way to make sure the dollar weapon is not used against you is to not use the dollar during peacetime, not put yourself into a position where, it can be used against you. So divest of it. Don't trade in it. Right? Just don't have all these relationships in dollars. Don't own U.S. dollars. Don't own U.S. treasuries. Have a way to conduct commerce another way. And obviously what we're going to end up doing is we're going to be driving Russia and China even closer together. And if we believe that Russia and China are our adversaries, bringing our adversaries closer together can't possibly be good. right? Because now they're a stronger force to be adverse to. And obviously, if Russia and China are very close together, India is, going to get in on that. I mean, and now you're talking about nearly 40% of the world's population. You're talking about tremendous natural resources and manufacturing capacity. I mean, that's a big block. And if those nations basically de-dollarize, that is a game changer. I mean, because Europe has already got the euro. I mean, we're really need the emerging markets. We need Russia and more so China, India to be big in the dollar. And if they just get out of it, and how far off would the Middle East be from getting out of the dollar if some of these other big customers are getting out of the dollar? So, I don't think anybody likes giving the U.S. this advantage. I mean, the U.S. obviously enjoys having it, but that doesn't mean we're going to have it forever. And we're especially vulnerable because our economy is a complete basket case, because having that reserve currency status for so long allowed our economy to disintegrate to the point we now depend on it, because we don't have the industrial capacity that would be required if we had to fend for ourselves. We can't produce the things that we consume. We have to print money and use that money to buy the things that everybody else produces, because they've got all the factories. They've got all the infrastructure. They've got the supply chains. They've got the trained workers. And we're feeling, the consequences right now just from COVID, all these supply chains that are broken down. Had we had our own supply chains in the United States like we did once before, we wouldn't be as vulnerable. I mean, look what's going on in these ports in California. Why? Because everything has to be imported. We don't make anything over here. Everything we're consuming has to come through these ports, and the capacity isn't there.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.